Hey, if you're getting anything helpful, it's the wrong one. Where is that? Here we go.
Being competitive in the business world is a lot different today. In fact, it's different every day. Every day. Can you keep up with the change? We'll help. This is the Power Apps Academy podcast. We'll talk about anything and everything Microsoft Power Apps. Finally, you can reach capabilities that were once only reserved for high-end development tools. And with our help, you'll quickly become a pro. Let's do it. Welcome to the Power Apps Academy podcast. And now your hosts, Barry Abramson and Darren Neese.
Hey, Barry, we're back. I know it's been a few weeks since we've done a podcast episode.
Hey, Darren. Yeah, good to have you back. Hope you're feeling better.
Yeah, thank you.
You're looking well. That's the main thing.
Yeah, thank you. I've been in the hospital a total of 4 times since I've let you know some of my medical issues, but so I've got a procedure scheduled at the end of this month, so hopefully that will be the end of that, and so I am feeling a little better, so that's good. So I'm hoping that we get back on a regular schedule for everybody here really soon. And how everything's going on your end?
Yeah, I've been pretty busy, to be honest. So the last few weeks I've been tied up with a few things, but I'm looking to get back on track over Christmas. I know I've got some time. There's a few things I need to finish up, and then hopefully in the New Year's we can get onto a more frequent cadence back to the good old days. So look forward to that. Just trying to think where we got up to on our last episode. It's been a few weeks and so much has happened. So I'm just trying to recall where we got to. I know we'll pick it up quite easily. So.
I'm looking at our official podcast page over on buzzsprout.com. And so I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 episodes we've done so far. So the first one was introduction, plans for the podcast. We talked about getting started with just the basics. Number 3, we talked about filter, using distinct and sort. Then number 4 was we covered search, starts with, and other basics. And then our last episode, it looks like number 5 was the Power Apps components basics.
Yeah, that was a good one, actually. That was a good one because I know we covered the component bar, and really we looked at a high level. And then, I think you took us into a fairly deep dive, and I learned a whole lot of stuff that I didn't think was possible. So that was a great episode. So if you want to learn about the component bar, I would definitely go back and watch it. And if you're new and this is the first time you're watching us, go back and watch all the episodes. There's some great information in there for newbies, and if you're starting out, it's a great resource. And you can listen to it. So it's not just watching it. If you want to listen to it in the car or whatever, you can do that as well. Now we'll try and factor that in. It's difficult, right, when you do these sort of things because it's quite visual. So we'll try and explain things for those who want to listen to it as a podcast instead of viewing it. So we'll try and think about that when we're talking. Be as descriptive.
Absolutely. So we're actually broadcasting from a few different locations. So we're here on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, on your YouTube channel. We're broadcasting onto the Facebook Academy's Facebook group, your group that you've formed. And then we also have the audio podcast, which is over on buzzsprout.com. However, that's being aggregated over there on Spotify, Apple. What do you call that? I'm not much of an Apple person. What do you call that? iTunes?
iTunes.
Yeah, so a lot of the major podcast platforms, I believe there's a Google one that we are registered on as well. So any of the big ones that you guys possibly could use, you could search for us there. So just wanted to mention that. So what do you want to cover this week, Barry?
So I think what were we talking about? I think we after the last episode, we thought it might be quite good to have a look at menus, because there's a few ways of swapping between screens. Now, one thing I remember struggling with was, right, so we've got an app. How much information should you actually fit on one screen? I mean, I suppose it's personal preference, but I'm sure there's sort of best practices in terms of not having too much information. So you want to have
Yeah.
information, you want to make it flow, you want to have a nice user experience, and I think you don't want to have it clunky. You don't want to have too much information on one page. So you want to structure it well, and then you want to be able to swap between uh, maybe tabs or a menu to go to different pages. So maybe we can explore that kind of thing. What do you think, Darren?
Absolutely. I think that's a great place to go to from here. Since we've already covered the basics of components, so moving on to creating a menu, you should probably always create a menu as a component so you can use it on multiple screens. Very easily drop that over to each of your screens and reuse that component. And it's a little more advanced than what we did last week with this header component, in which we'll actually have some data. We'll have a table uh, structure of data of all the menu items that we'll have. And
And Darren, just before we jump into that, so I mean, let's just quickly explore some of the different types of menus we can have. On your advice, it sounds like the best one to demo for this episode is within the component. But
Mhm.
what other types of menus? Because I think I've used a tab style menu before, and that I've
Mm.
never actually done one in a component, just
Okay.
tabs, and also just basically some like a banner at the top of the screen with some text on it, and that I just copy and paste, and it's like it's quite similar to a banner, but
Mhm.
there's some different ways of doing it. What other ways can you think of other than the component?
Well, I think going the route of the component is always a good idea, because let's say if we weren't using a component, and what I started doing my very first application, yeah, it's probably been 3 years ago when I started off with the Power Apps, and I think a lot of other people get into this practice of just putting random buttons all over the place, like this goes to this screen, this goes to this screen, and then having a copy and paste. And if you change a new screen, you got to go back through all these different places, and it's almost if you're a computer programmer or software developer background, almost like spaghetti. You got a spaghetti situation where it's really hard to maintain. If you put it on one component, you could always update things in one place and it gets updated everywhere, which is really nice. So components are definitely the way to go with that. And something I should mention, probably won't go into this because this is maybe one more step of advanced with components, but you can actually create a component library. So something like a menu you could use across a dozen apps that you have it in the organization, and you could create a component library, put all your components there. And so if you need to make a change, you would make the change in that component library, and it would update them in all the applications. If you open up those applications that actually update or do a refresh. But I think
And
those are the
those
maybe the
and those component items can be vertical, they can be horizontal, so you're not limited
yeah.
with that, are you? You can sort of structure them how you want, and it's really important, to always have branding in the back of your mind. You want to keep it branded with your company colors, and I suppose this is another great thing about a component is you just apply the colors and the branding once, and you can reuse it without having to faff around with a whole lot of different buttons trying to color them, get them the look and feel the same.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a probably a dozen different elements that I like to incorporate in all my applications. So that's why I have built a what I call an application template, which template has a special meaning in Power Apps. So I don't even like to call it that. I call it the Jumpstart Kit, which is it gives me a jumpstart on any application. So I've got a menu in there, I've got an application header, I've got all the dynamic theming. There's all kinds of different things that will probably build into this thing that will actually sort of pull from my experience that I've done in that. But you're right, we could do the menus different ways. Now with a landscape orientation that we have here, like I guess you call it maybe the tablet format is what they call it here in Power Apps, where we have more space horizontally. I like to put the menu right over here on the side. Of course, us English speakers, we read from left to right. So I like to put the menu off to the left. Now, if I was building a phone application, a mobile app where it's more portrait, I like to put the menu at the very bottom.
Mhm.
So that's my preference in building these apps. Is that what you find that you've done in the past when you build apps?
Yeah, yeah, I find certainly well, most of the apps I've built so far, my I like to put the menu at the top of the screen. And if it
Okay.
is if it's a mobile app, I tend to have buttons on the screen that you can click with your finger, and I normally have them sort of quite central or at the bottom. So just depending on obviously what the app does.
Okay.
But yeah, again, you've got to think about the field, all the data and all the fields and components that you're going to have on your page, and real estate's quite important, and whatever suits the app really. So some apps might be better on the side, some at the top, wherever. So I suppose it just depends.
Yeah. I've been keeping an eye on
And
our.
just a quick thought. So maybe once we've finished this screen to a degree, I quite like that starter kit that you mentioned. Perhaps we
Mhm.
can make one available to our viewers once we've got that far with this demo app that we're making.
Yeah, sure. So I've been keeping an eye on the comments here. So G Spoon says, "Good evening. Appreciate everything you do." Well, thanks for stopping by. Also,
Hey,
Data
you
is
too.
King.
Hey, nice to
Hey
see you
guys.
again, Data is King.
Yeah. And
But
then
you're
we
glad to
also
have Darren back.
I guys, I feel horrible being away for so long.
You've deserted everyone, Darren.
I've been on these antibiotics and I just feel like just laying down all the time. It's just a real downer. Like I don't feel like doing anything. I just don't have the energy. But so Sebastian says, "Hey guys," or "Hi guys, nice to see you back. Quite difficult for me to catch live sessions." Well, I'm glad you caught us live this time. That's awesome.
Yeah, where are
And
you signing in from, Sebastian?
yeah, yeah, let us know.
Yeah.
And then Data is King says components are a real time saver. Absolutely. That's so there's actually a concept in software development called it's an acronym DRY. Don't repeat yourself. So components allow us to move a little towards not repeating ourselves, create a component or an object that we can reuse later on. So absolutely. So let's dive in and create a menu component. What do you say? So we're going to go over here the components like we did the last session, and over here on the tree view, and we'll click on this new component. Now, me personally, I like, as you saw in the other one that we built, I always like to prefix my components with COMP, and I'll call this menu R, perhaps. All right. So there's that, and typically, I'll make the width of this to be either 100 or 120. Let's start off with 120 and see how that looks. And in order to create a menu, what we need is a, a repetition of some items. What do you think of using buttons for each of our menu items, Barry? Do you like that idea?
Yeah. I think I've tended to use buttons. I suppose there's no. I mean, it doesn't have to be a button, right? You can just put any sort of shape in there, any image in there. It's up to you. But you can
Yeah,
put
we've
some
got.
text in the buttons, and it seems to work quite well. What do you think?
Yeah, so we'll use the buttons here. They're pretty simple, easy to use. But as you stated, we could use other things. An icon control. We could use an image control. Um, really anything that we could actually put labels there and just have text that they can click
Yeah.
on. But buttons are a quick, easy, simple thing to throw in. It's already got the hover stuff already built in, and you've got
And
text right there.
it's only buttons that you can round the edges on, isn't it? You can't do it from a rectangle that you put in. I think it's only the buttons that
Yeah,
have
you're
round
right.
edges, which is
I'm
quite
trying
nice.
to think of other things. We could create images. Now, the image control does actually it does have. You could do a border radius around an image, but you could actually make the image look like it has a rounded corner. So that would be something that we could use. Um, but buttons have all the
But
hover and
buttons
the
are easy,
press.
right?
What's
Definitely
that?
easiest. Yeah.
Buttons, yeah. Right. So
And
let's do
then,
that. So,
yeah, because
mhm.
when you were talking about getting the radius round, it's similar when we put the header in with the image of the person who's logged in, and that's got a circle around it. It'll be the same sort of concept, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what we did there. We used an image. Yeah. Okay. In order to repeat items, we're going to go to our trusty gallery control here. So I think that might be layout, and it is. And we want our if we want our menu to go down on the side of the screen, we want to use that would be a vertical. I always use blank because I don't like all the stuff it adds to it. I know some people like to use that, but let's just expand this.
So what are we do? We're putting a gallery in, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. So I mean, generally when I've created a menu, I've just put in buttons. So why are we using a gallery?
Ah, okay.
What's
So
interesting
what we
there?
want to do is make this flexible
Mhm.
so that as we add screens to our application, let's say we have a dozen screens, instead of having to go into the component and add code for have each individual screen name hard coded in there, we could just build a table and initialize our menu with that value. So
Okay.
and in fact, we could actually import this component into a completely different application that has completely different screens, whether or not we use the component library or not. So if we create this thing right, as Data is King mentioned, components are a real time saver. We do it once and we do it in a way so it's really flexible, can handle any situation or any app that we throw it into. Does that make
Okay.
sense? Because
Yeah.
if
Okay.
we
So
just sort of,
just for those beginners out there, so yeah. So a really easy way to do it is just to add some buttons on, but that's not going to give you the flexibility of the way that Darren's going to show you now. So doing it this way is going to allow it to be a lot more flexible, and you're going to reference a table that's going to populate the gallery, right?
yes.
Okay, so you just
Yeah.
have to, yeah. So maybe could we do it so that we do the gallery on half of it, and maybe do some buttons on the other half, just to show the difference?
Sure, sure. Now, are you talking about here within the same component, or do you mean create the buttons like on the screens?
Yeah, yeah. Well, just to give everyone, because the starters, I've just got the starters in the back of my mind who this might be quite overwhelming for. So what
Okay.
we could do, if we could take the gallery and just sort of shrink it up and just leave a little bit at the bottom. And so we could just show the differences if we were just adding buttons that clicked on different pages, what the difference would
Okay.
be between the two methods. And then
Sure.
we can delete the buttons at the end because we won't go on with that method, but might be quite
Yeah,
useful.
certainly. All right. So this top half, I gave this gallery a little border here so we can see what we're working with, and we know where it ends. And then we could actually add. Now, how many screens do we have here? I believe we have 4 screens. Okay. So let's add in, let's say 4 buttons here. So we'll say button, and I'm gonna paste.
Just yeah, while you're adding those, I mean, do you rename all your buttons with a prefix and label them? I know in best practice you should do everything right, but I think we all get a bit lazy, especially when you've got loads of different items that you need to rename.
Absolutely.
I mean, I need generally do the ones that I actually reference somewhere. Otherwise, I just
Yeah.
leave them.
That's actually the rule that I make for myself is if I reference a control in code anywhere and any expression, I want to make sure I actually have a good name. Now within a gallery, you're just going to name the first one, right? That's the only thing you can change is the very first record or the first row of a gallery. So in this case, I'll call this button menu item. Okay. But down here, we have different buttons. Now we could prefix these screen one. In fact, I'm going to copy that. Let's screen two, screen three, and screen four. Now, over here, they're called screen one, two, three, four. Okay. So we could actually have here, we're looking for the on select, and we'll say navigate, and we're going to look for screen one. So you notice something here? We can't actually reference the screens in the application because this is a component that could be dropped into
Wow.
any application. So it's
Yeah.
as if that component has blinders on and it can't see any application that it's going to be thrown into. So now there is something that we could do was we click on the component. There's a little setting here called access app scope. So if we turn that on, it allows this component to be able to see the scope of variables from the application. Now let's see if it allows us to do this now. So there's screen one, and it looked like it might work. So have you ever worked with that? Have you ever noticed
Yeah,
this
well,
little?
that's one of the things I learned from the last one when we did the
Oh yeah.
component. You did show us that, so that was because to be honest, I thought that yeah, that's why probably why I didn't use these components as menus because that I didn't bother to investigate that. But yeah, that was a great tip.
Yeah, and that used to not be there. It used to have, and coming from a software development background or coding world, is that it's actually in an object-oriented language like C# or Java, you almost don't want that to be the scope to be passed. Is actually a bad thing because object-oriented and we're creating a component, we're creating an object, so we're sort of doing some object-oriented design here, some development here, in that whenever you create an object, there's 4 different properties that make something object oriented, one of which is encapsulation. So you've got everything encapsulated into like this black box or into a component in this case. And whenever you're ready to use it in an application, it's instantiated and created in a memory, and it only knows what you give it. So like a black box, it's sort of contained. Whenever you drive a car, you're not worried about what's going on underneath the hood, the engine and the cooling and the AC lines and all that type of stuff. You're just worried about the steering wheel and the gas pedal, just a few things. And having just a few things passed in, what actually want to have all these properties. Remember the last session over here in the app header, we created this extra text property. That's sort of like having a steering wheel into our engine or our car, how to control our car, is that you want everything to be passed in. It's actually a good programming practice. But however, in Power Apps world, if you're like, this component is just used in this application, I just want it to be able to see the variables. It's sort of like a shortcut. You could set that up if you wanted something hard coded to the application. It allows you to do that. So it's sort of nice that Microsoft allows us to do that. Me personally, I try to stay away from stuff like that if I can. So I'm sort of curious. If we go back over here to our screen, let's go ahead and add our new component. So we go over here to custom and we'll add our menu bar. Okay, here we go. And let's run this. Let's try to go to screen 4. And it works. That's good.
You lost your menu though.
Well, yeah, we need to add it to each one,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so something that okay, that fits better. Okay. So now what I'll do is I'll copy this, and now for this top portion of work, there for the gallery, we want to give it a table value. So we could if I want to create a new table of values, let's say with clear collect or collect, create a little collection. What I'll do first is I'll just bring over a little button here, and I'll call this create menu. And inside, if we click on this button, what I want to do is clear collect. Okay. And what
So,
we
so
want,
for those who don't know, a collection is just basically a table in memory that holds a number of values, right? And that's a collect command. Clear collect will just clear it out, and then you can populate that table, and it only sits while the app's running, right? And when you close the app down, then it clears automatically. Is that right?
Yeah. Something that I like to tell people, if you don't know what we mean when we say table values, think of a spreadsheet where you've got columns and then you have rows. So a column would be, in this case, where I'm going to want a table of values where I've got menu text. So whatever we want to appear in these buttons, I'm going to put in menu text. And then we'll also have the screen to go to. That will be reference to a screen. So think of like these two columns in a spreadsheet. And then we'll have a row for each of our screens that we want a menu item for. Do you think that's a good analogy?
Yeah, and you can actually once you've created it, you can actually click on the collections, right? And you can see what they actually look like, how they're represented.
Absolutely. So yeah, after I create this menu, let's see here. The first parameter to clear collect, we should give it a variable name, and we should always call our collections, start with COL for collection, call it menu items. Okay. And so we've got menu text, screen to go to. There's screen one. Okay. And the menu text. Okay. So yeah, I think I'll just use the new screen one just to keep things simple. And so whenever you have these curly braces, maybe let me see if I can make my screen bigger for everybody here. Might be easier. There we go. You see curly braces, think of a record or a row within a table. So I could copy that. I'll use a comma, and here's the second row. I'll say 2, comma, paste. Comma, and 4.
For those of you who are listening, which would be hard for you to see this. So yeah, so we've added the menu bar down the side. We've got a gallery in the top half of the menu bar. Just some normal buttons. So this is, so if you're a newbie and you're struggling with this, the gallery and the clear collect commands, then just stick with the dragging some buttons onto the component, add it onto each screen, and then you just click the buttons with the navigate to the various screens that you want each button to go to. But so we're Darren's describing now the gallery component of that menu bar and how he's using the clear collect function to add in basically the shortcuts for each of the buttons that appear in the gallery menu.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned if we double click or select this variable here, we can actually see the values of everything in the table in our collection here. So there's text screen 1, 2, 3, 4, and it says control because I'm actually referencing the screens themselves. So it's interpreting that as an object or a control.
So that screen to go to, is that a preset command? I missed when you were typing that in. Right.
That is a name that I made up. So like menu text and screen to go to, I just made those up. You could really call it anything, but it probably should be meaningful. So if you're looking at it in code, it makes sense to you. So let's say if I were to double click on this and look at it, it's like, oh, screen to go to or menu text. To me, that makes sense of what it means within a menu.
So we haven't got to the point yet where you're actually pointing that at a specific screen to go to, right? There's no commands in there. It's basically just labels.
So this reference to screen to go to and referencing screen 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice there's no double quotes or single quotes around. That's actually a reference to the screen itself. So that's the pointer to each of the screens. Now the menu doesn't know about it just yet. Now there's 2 ways we could do this. We could go over here to the component. And one way to do this is to create, you see how we don't have any custom properties over here. The last session where we created this little app header, we created one custom property called extra text. And that extra text showed up here at the top here. We could create a custom value here called menu items. And it's going to be an input property type. It's going to be something that's going to be passed in. That's normally what you have for a property type. Sometimes you'll have an output, but most of the time it's input.
Yeah. So
Now,
Darren's you're in, just for those who aren't viewing the screen, we're in the component properties now, and you're creating a custom property, right? Yeah.
yes. And I'm creating, remember that collection we were just creating a moment ago? I'm providing a way in the component for an application to pass in all their menu items. So that's what I'm doing here. And as we've said several times, it's a table type of value. So we could have text, we could pass in a number, we can pass in a Boolean, which is a yes, no, true, false. We have a date and time. We got just one screen object. We could do a screen object, but in this case, we have a whole table of screens. So, and you can see we've got image, video, audio, color, and currency. So there's all kinds of different types you can pass in. So I'm going to select table. Okay. And I'm simply going to click on create. Okay. Now, if I click on the menu items, look, we've got some sample stuff here. So this is a sample table that's created for us, but it doesn't have the field names. It's got sample string field, sample number field, sample Boolean field. And if we were to get that gallery to look at this, it would be confused later on if we try to give it a table with other column names. So what we want to do is have something similar, or at least has reference to like a menu text and a screen to go to. So what I'm going to do is I'm at least going to have a single item here as a default. So if we drop this over in an application, doesn't already have these things already created for us, and it will at least have something in here that is meaningful to it with field names and a reference to a screen. Okay, so I'm going to take out that curly brace and that curly brace. Okay, and take out that comma. We would only have a comma if we had more than one of those. Okay, so I'm just creating a 1-row, 2-column table here. Menu text. I'm going to say sample menu, or menu item 1. How about that? Now, inside of our component, we really don't know what screens are going to be over wherever we drop this component. So what I do, if you want a reference to a screen, you could say app.activeScreen. And that is a reference to a type of object that's a screen. So that's what I do. So this table has been defined so that this gallery will know the data type that it's going to be accepting later on. Okay, so this is the gallery. It's going to repeat each of these things for each menu item. So here, what we're going to do is we are here on the items. Now, if we want to reference a property, a custom property for this component, you see the name of our component here. We call it comp menu bar. And we'll hit dot. Oh, look, there's menu items right there. Okay. Now that menu, though, the default menu item only has one, that table only has one item. And this button should give us the text of the menu item. It shouldn't just say button. So for the text for the button, I'm going to click on text. And in here, just like any other gallery, we're going to say this item. Everybody's familiar with working with galleries. You see this item is going to give you the current record. Now look, there's menu text. Okay, we've got that. And look, it says menu item 1. Now, what happens when they click on this button? Well, let's go to the on select for this button. Go there. After it selects the parent, it's fine. We'll keep that in there. We'll use a navigate. And we'll say this item, screen to go to. Now, what I like to do is there's actually other parameters within Navigate. If you're familiar with the Navigate function within Power Apps, you have the option of providing a transition. So in that case, I like Fade as my favorite one, but you could use any of the others. Sometimes
I always use none.
None?
Yeah, I almost found I don't think I've ever used the Fade one. But,
yeah, you can have the new screen like sort of coming through the side, one side, the other, or up, down, that type of stuff. but I sort of like the fade. I think it looks a little snazzy. All right, so I'll leave that there. There is a optional third parameter you can put in. Actually, the transition is an optional one as well, where you could actually pass a parameter into the new screen. I have a whole video that covers Navigate, so I talk about all three of those if you want to know more. But that's pretty much what I would put inside of a menu at this point. Okay, now let's go back over here and we'll run this. So we've got that one menu item and we got this create menu, but we don't have the different now these things should go to yeah, the different screens. Of course, we don't have menu on the other screens. But we created a collection here under this button. Now, the reason I create a little button here that we'll eventually delete is I want to get the code just right. And then once we're happy with the code, we'll put it over in the app on start. I don't know if we've really talked about the app on start. Have we, Barry?
No, not yet. No.
It'd probably be a good, if we have, it'd probably be a good review. So the app on start, if we click on the app object here, we can click on start. And this is code that will run every time the application runs. So let's say we wanted this code to run every time the application runs. We would hit Control A, which selects everything. Control C, which copies it to the clipboard. We'll go over to app and on start. So now nobody has to click on this button if they don't want to. And I'll delete it here in a moment. But so
so basically that's just to set variables or set any properties or tables, whatever, as it starts. And I think there's similar OnVisible. Is it OnVisible property for different pages? Sometimes you could do it when a page loads. You could do something similar, but this is doing it for when the actual app loads, right?
Absolutely. So if you click on a screen, now Microsoft has really changed around this menu structure. Have you noticed that in the last few weeks?
It's a pain. I don't like it, to be honest.
Huge pain. You know what? A shortcut that I had when I clicked on a button or a screen, I could go up here to action and I saw all the events like OnVisible, OnHidden, or for a button on select.
Pain.
And what do they do? So this is the next best shortcut. You click on the screen, and instead of scrolling through all these things here, of course, a screen doesn't have very many things here. But let's say if it's a button or whatever, here's all the actions right here. So that's what I found to be helpful. So you have an OnVisible and an OnHidden. So and if you click on a button, look, there's OnSelect right there at the top. So that's a good way of getting at that. But absolutely. So if you click on a screen, you could have code that runs on the OnVisible. And if you have any cleanup code, you could put that in OnHidden. Now, just going back to our comments real quick, you asked where Sebastian was from. I'm in Sweden, and it's 11 p.m. here, getting a bit Power Apps just before bedtime. That's about your neck of the woods, isn't it?
So I feel your pain with these late night broadcasts. There's nothing like a bit of Power Apps late at night, is there?
And then Robert joined us here. Such a pain. I get lost in the menus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Robert, I don't know if you're talking about creating a menu, if you're talking about the menu that Microsoft changed on.
I think you're talking about the Microsoft menus.
Yeah. I can't believe they did that. I was so used to that.
Just when you get used to it, they're like, swap the whole thing around.
Yeah. Okay. So this menu now isn't getting our collection. Now, why is that? So what we need to do, we had this menu selected, and we'll go look for our customer property. Look at menu items. Oh, look, it's got our default thing in here. Well, we want to overwrite that. We're going to take that out, and we're going to use our collection because our collection starts with COL, menu items. Okay. So there we see our 4 screens. Oh, look at that. Screen 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Well, now that is there, let's make sure that this thing, so I'm going to copy this, our menu component, now that we sort of have it configured and set up right, especially with that, the menu items. I'm going to go to screen 2, paste, screen 3, paste, and screen 4, paste. This looks like a little bit of a mess. Now, what we could do for this menu, because I don't like how it looks here, is I'm going to set up the background color or the fill of this to be white. Now, if we go back to screen 4, it's not clashing with these other things there. All right, so I'm going to run this and just sort of test this out. Screen 1, there we go. screen 2, 3, 4. And really the only thing that was changing there in screen 2 and 3 is this little header up here.
Yeah.
Okay. But let's test our little buttons down here. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, and there's 4. So the way that, Barry, that you spoke of.
I did the easy way, right?
Yeah, it is the easy way.
so let's recap that, right? So if you my 2 cents here is if you're a beginner, go for my easy method, right? Because you'll understand that it's very easy. Using components, put your buttons on there, and then you can add that to different pages. Obviously, when you do a component, do all the coloring, and then that color and branding will transfer to each page that you've loaded the components onto. I'm going to rewatch this video just to watch again what you did, because some of it went over my head, but I'm keen to learn that, so I'm gonna rewatch it. And if you guys are just listening to the podcast, definitely go back and have a look at the video, because it's quite interesting what Darren has shown us today.
Yeah. Now, there's something that, and G Spoon has brought this up. I'm going to bring his comment up. Do you generally use the Access App Scope option? Me personally, I like to stay away from it because I feel bad using it. It's coming from a software development background. It's sort of a bad practice, but I would say if you're creating a component for this just one application, it really doesn't matter. You don't feel too bad about it if you wanted to use it.
Guilty pleasure, right?
What's that?
A guilty pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a different way we could have gone about this. Okay. So let me show you the difference between the two. So over here on components, we've got this little, what that allows you to do is you don't have to create all these properties. So we could have got away from this menu items, and in this gallery, not even use the menu items that's passed to it. What we could have done is reference our collection directly. Call, where's it at? A little surprised it's not allowing us to get at it, because it is right here. Menu items. Okay, there we go. You see what I did there? So I had this component because it can get at the scope of the whole application. It can see things that are in the application because we selected this Access App Scope. And because of that, now, even if we were to change up the collection, it would still say, even if we did not set this, or we even took that property out, it could still see that. It just feels a little sloppy to me,
So Darren, I've got something for you, which I think some people might appreciate. So what I like to do is in a menu, when you click a button, the button changes color and stays a different color until another button's clicked.
So whichever screen we're on, let's say if we're on screen 1, it should probably have a different color here. Just let us know which screen we're on.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Yeah, that's actually an excellent point to bring up. So what we should do here, over here in our component, let's set this up. So here's the button that we can change. And let's look at the color. So the color, now this is a white color, and this is the, the text color, the foreground color. What we want to do is we want to check if the app.activeScreen.name equals this item dot screen to go to dot name. Okay, if those two things match up, so the app.activeScreen is an object within Power Apps that you can reference that will tell you what screen the user is currently active on, what they're looking at. So if that thing matches up with the current menu item, then we want to do something special. Okay, and in that case, I want to use sort of want to reverse the colors unless you have a better idea here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to click on, I'm going to go find where my fill is at. Okay, so there's the fill. It's that cool Power Apps blue color. Okay, and I'm going to go over here to color, and I'm going to open this up so it's easier to read here or work with. So if that returns true, I want it to be a blue color. Okay, else I want it to be white. Okay. Now, does this code statement, does this expression make sense? So I'll put here blue.
And this is the text, right? It's changing color.
Yeah, so this is the foreground color of the button. Okay. So if the button, the menu item is the screen we're currently on, based on the active screen equals, that menu item screen to go to's name. That's how we know if that's true. If it is, we're going to turn it blue, otherwise white. Now, what we need to do is do the same thing for the fill, but reverse the colors. So I'm going to go find fill for this button, and I'll replace that with this. And what I can do you know how to reverse a Boolean value?
Yeah. Not.
Exclamation you could use the keyword not. There's another way of doing that, which is to use a exclamation point, exclamation point, or use a bang operator. That will do the same thing. I sort of like the not, because sometimes an exclamation point you can easily miss that and not really notice it. So, all right, so let's see what this looks like here. If I go back over to the screens and run this, okay, something's not quite right, huh? Okay, so it looks like the normal color. Looks like we're getting a little closer, but so if it is, the screen is blue, and then this.
Might be something you have to pick up in the next one, Darren. I'm just conscious.
Next session.
Yeah, we're running out of time, but I think that'll be a good one if we start off the next session. Maybe we can just get our branding right on that menu navigation, and that seems to be working now.
Look at that. So what I found in Power Apps is that not operator, either using the word not or the exclamation point, it tries to perform that operation on what's right beside it. And sometimes you want to use parentheses. Let me go back to the code as I'm talking about this to just make it clear. So here for the text, what I did it's actually in the background color, the fill. Do you remember in algebra when you're in junior high or high school, if you wanted, you know how like multiplication always happens before subtraction and addition? And if you want the subtraction addition to happen first before multiplication, you got to put parentheses around it. So that's true in the programming world, where you want to force the operator precedence, or what actually happens first in sequence. So what I want to do is apply this whole not to all of this. Well, really so this equal sign is what's called an operator. Well, the not is an operator. So what we're telling Power Apps is like, okay, evaluate this first and then reverse that value. Otherwise, it was trying to reverse the name, which really doesn't make any sense because name is not a Boolean value. It's a string value. So yeah, order of operations. I'm just looking at the comments here. G-Spoon, order of operations. That's actually what it's called. Thank you. So that works now. So if you wanted to get really snazzy here, I would actually, now you can tell when you hover over, it does sort of change color. So that's good. Now, Barry, would it be okay with you if I took out these 4 buttons and made this gallery take up the full height?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, if you don't, would you use the same method to color the buttons in the easy option below, in the menu below?
I believe so. I believe that would still work just fine. In fact, let me go here. Let me just copy and paste. But here's the drawback of the easy way. you gotta update it on all 4 of them. Where with a gallery, you just have to update it once and it repeats it all the way throughout.
Yeah.
So here I have to select all 4 buttons. I got to go in here. I'll paste that. It doesn't like something. What it doesn't like. Oh, it
That's
doesn't
referencing.
have this item screen. So we'd actually have to hard code this easy way is actually becoming the hard and tedious way, to be honest. Because in order for this to work, we'd have to go into each individual one, and you wouldn't be able to you wouldn't be able to rename your screens, or you'd have to say screen 1 dot name. You could do that. So if you ever rename screen 1, it'll actually update that. And
Right.
then, so you'd have to go around. So I'd recommend, if you guys are watching this video or listening to this, is that I'd recommend staying away from the easy way, because it's not good for the long term, and you're going to be better off learning the better way of using the galleries. Okay, so this is 3. I just wanted to show that this can be done.
Yeah. No, I think it'd be good because just thinking back when I started, having a look at the other way would probably overwhelm me a little bit. Yeah. So I think for those who just want to get started quickly with a menu, then you can do that, and then as you become more confident, then come back and then do the more advanced way.
Yeah.
But if you can pick it up straight away, go for it. I mean, that's the better way. Depends how.
Yeah, what I'd like to make sure I get in before we stop tonight. I want to bring this to the top, bring the gallery to the top, and we'll keep these buttons in here. Just if anybody wants to look at this, we can make this MS app file available to everybody here. But this gallery, what I want to do is make the height take up the full height here. So I'll say parent, which should be the component itself, dot height. So we'll do that. So it's going to take up that. And why didn't it cover up those buttons? Probably because the fill of that gallery is not white. So we'll do that, make sure that is set up. And also we'll make sure that the gallery width is the same thing. So we're going to say parent, which is the component, dot width. Okay, there we go. Now it looks good here. And we may not want a blue border. We might want something more neutral. So we might make this like a dark gray or a light gray. What do you think? So any questions? See, looking for any questions. So Barry, do you think that's a good stopping point, or is there any?
Yeah, I'm gonna running out of time, so I think that's a good stopping point. I think some really useful information. I know I'm gonna go back and watch this again because I found that really useful to dynamically create the menu items. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's excellent.
So if you guys have any questions about this, Barry, as you watch it again, or if anybody else watches again and you guys have any questions, please let us know in the comments wherever you're viewing this at, and we'll take a look at and sort of log that, and then we will we could have a follow-up on this and sort of cover anything that's come up, and maybe let that guide us what the next thing that we cover. Barry, do you have any ideas of where you'd like to go in our next session?
Yeah, I think I don't know if you've used containers before.
Yeah.
It might be quite useful just to understand a little bit more about containers and how they're used, what they do.
Yeah, containers are great. I used to use groups a lot of times. I don't think containers were around all the time. They eventually got added perhaps a few months ago, if I'm not mistaken. And I end up liking them a lot more than groups. So that would actually be a great topic to cover.
And then I think it would be great to put some actions around, maybe on some of the buttons, sending data within emails that are captured from our app. That might be quite useful. And even possibly, generating PDF. If we get that, it might be a little bit too advanced, but we can maybe think about something like that. But if you guys have any ideas of what you want us to cover, then just let us know.
Yeah. All right, very good, guys. Well, let's see here. Hey, if you're getting anything helpful out of this, a comment or even a like really helps the channel, and lets people like you know this is good content. Much appreciated. Guys, for some reason, YouTube thinks you're going to like this video next. Let's see if they're right. Or you can select this playlist, which I've selected for you based on the content you're currently watching. Guys, gotta hurry. Click one of them. Otherwise, YouTube's going to autoplay some other video, which you probably don't want. Thanks. Thanks, guys. See you next time.